Advisory Union. We call it to order. We do have a changes addition to the agenda. We are going to move up D of the administrative report to the beginning. So because Larry has a guest to introduce, and right now that guest is slated for the very end, and that's not fair. So are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay. Approval of the minutes. We have two approvals. Why do we have two approvals? We didn't do it last, or was that an emergency meeting? That was a special meeting. Okay, so I will take a motion to approve. This is well, there's really not much of the October 15th because that's of. I will take a motion for the approval of September 23rd and October 15th.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion about either of those minutes? None. We'll see how I can do here. I will take a roll call. Amy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth?
I'm going to vote aye on the first and abstain from the second because I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye on both.
Mark?
Aye.
Okay, Sarah?
Aye on both.
Am I missing anyone online? Davis?
Aye.
And Megan?
Aye.
And Nikki?
Abstain and then aye.
Okay. Thank you. I guess it's okay that we did it that way. We'll just wing it. I'm the boss. Let's do one. Okay, thank you. And I am an aye on both. Public participation. No. Larry, because we are moving. Larry?
To the above the administrative reports. So you can still do if you want to move them to the very beginning before the policy work.
I would like to move them after public participation and do it before items for discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my
I bet Ian would like
preference.
that
Is
even more.
Okay. Public comment is not legally required, but we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns over issues. Through these meetings, our board models for our students how to conduct public discourse, and that the board and members of our community can approach controversial issues in a civil and constructive manner and can demonstrate mutual respect. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed for discussion. Please start by identifying yourself and what town you reside in. Does anybody in the room have public comments? Okay. Anyone online?
Nobody has their hand up.
Hmm?
No one has their hand up.
Okay. I do want to make a comment in that I received a letter in which an individual stated that they were sending this email out as public comment. And then I informed them that, and there was a little back and forth, but I informed them that it's not really public comment because it's in a private email, even though there were several people. So we as a board believe that letters sent in are important, and we have what's that folder called?
Correspondence.
A correspondence folder that we put those in that then can be viewed by the public. But upon legal advice, at one point, we were informed that public comment and public participation is limited to those who show up either online or in person. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Larry,
Christine's,
I just want to
I'm
make,
sorry.
Lori also put it in the meeting packet for tonight.
Oh,
So
good.
it's in there,
Okay, yeah,
just to be clear.
thank you.
Yeah.
Look around here, anything else? Larry,
okay. So I'm gonna walk you through the budget book and, Ian will talk about. I'm sharing my screen. All right, so I have printed copies for those in attendance. This is a new platform for us, where for transparency's sake and the ability to see the budget in mobile devices and in paper and on the web. We've gone to this platform. And it's going to look, very similar to what you've seen before, but all in one package. The executive summary basically goes over the budget book structure. Profile of the supervisory union is stuff, data taken from the census. I'm going pretty quick, so as I work through it, I've emailed this to the board and it was posted on the website on October 18th. The Board of Education members, the leadership team of the SU. Currently, the only thing in the budget book is the SU because we do the SU budget first to build the assessments into the local budgets. And I'd like to, on this part of the executive summary, point out the evolution of Vermont education law. I think this will just be, I think it's something that came up at the last, as you all know, last budget season was a tough one around the state. And some of the questions that I got from other town managers, citizens was, how did we get here kind of thing? And, it's sort of like what happened. So I was able to explain to them, Act 153 and what all these acts that we talk about. And I thought it'd be great to have it all on one page where you have Act 153, Act 166, which is universal pre-K, which Bill and I were just talking about. Act 46, the Vermont Education Merger Law, where we got a waiver essentially to not merge Weathersfield and Heartland. And as you all know, Windsor and West Windsor did merge. And one of the arguments made to the state board was that we were going to both individually and collectively commit ourselves to maximizing the context of existing law, the role that the current supervisory union board strategically played in setting, implementing, and assessing district policy and educational operations. Act 173, which does affect us budget-wise, is where they went to a census block grant model, which FYI, not to steal the thunder of the fiscal year 26 numbers, is $192,000 less than what we got last year. It used to be like food service, and that the number of meals you serve is more money you get. It's not a one-to-one, but you get a percentage back. That's the way special ed funding worked until Act 173, where now part of it is based like that, but the other part of it is a census block grant model, and you just get what you get based on their state formula. Organizational chart, which I don't think is surprising to many, the SU board, and then Christine, and then our department heads and our principals. The budget process, this is the timeline we've been working with. We've had 4, I believe, budget committee meetings, 1, 2, 3, 4 budget committee meetings. So I want to thank Christine, Brian from Heartland, Sarah from Weathersfield, Angie, Sarah from Weathersfield, and Elizabeth from Mount Scotney School District, who served on the budget committee and worked with us as we prepared this budget that you see before you. Student enrollment trends. I think this is interesting to look at as we look at the state over the last 10 years. The state is roughly down 2% over the last 10 years, but we've bucked that trend. Not by a lot, but we're not going backwards. We will have this updated. The other great thing about using this format, and I printed it out for people here to see what it would look like in a printed version. But one of the benefits is when we get the October 1 numbers that I'll ask for the one. The ADM numbers that we're working on now, I can update this chart with 24, 25 numbers. Currently, it's 23, 24 is the last year, but I can just update this and it's live and it happens automatically. Personnel changes. This is always an interesting part of any budget. I know to citizens when they ask about, if the SU budget's going up, are they adding personnel? There's two main parts of the SU budget we talk about a lot, which is administration operations and special education. Administration and operations consist of the curriculum office, the superintendent's office, the business office, DEI, HR,
Tech?
and IT. Yes. I'm crazy that I would forget that.
Yep.
So in IT, so in transportation, which we know is 12% of the budget, which we've been working on. The non-special ed part of the budget, administration operations, we are down. We are proposing through attrition one staff member cut, which is a retirement of an administrator. Ed Connors, who's been our CFO for almost the last 20 years and has done a great job and has been a valuable mentor to me, is riding off into the sunset December 31st. And we are proposing to reorganize his work duties between myself and Deanna Kroll, our controller, and not replacing that position in order to help out the local districts. Special education is up 3.8 FTEs, but it's important to note that those positions are currently posted positions that are not filled. It's not new additional positions. So just FYI, I'm comparing actual FY25 to proposed 26. Those are positions that are currently posted that are not, as of this moment, hired. Davis.
So in the SU right now, we're looking at a net -1 in FTE, essentially, if we're considering those as being like.
If all the positions were filled, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
from a public standpoint, I think it would be really valuable if we put budgeted FY25
Okay.
in here. Cause I was like, whoa, we're adding almost 4 positions.
That was a question I would have had in mind too. So it's good to know that.
Yeah, so
Really
if we
good
say
to know that
budgeted and then actual,
Okay.
maybe with a footnote that we still can't hire for people that we need, but
Yeah.
Okay.
so that it's really abundantly clear that we're not trying to add more people.
I'll make that more clear.
Thank you.
And then it's the bar product showing the same information, which I'll update. This is the next section. We just went over the executive summary. This is organizational information of the budget, which talks about the strategic plan and other areas. First thing is the geographic areas of our supervisory union, which you are all very well aware of. West Windsor, Windsor, Heartland, and Weathersfield. Our mission and values and vision are listed here. Our strategic priorities include our portrait of a graduate and our goals, our strategic plan and goals and objectives. Right out of strategic plan. Basis of budgeting. By the way, it's important to note that the Association of School Business Officials, ASBO, the Vermont version is called BASBO. The national organization is called ASBO, and these sections are what they consider to be the financial transparency to include these sections. I know this may be different than what we're used to seeing, but it's important to outline how we budget. And if there's a lot of information in here that is kind of dry and accounting speak, there's a glossary at the end. Now we're into the financial section, which is the meat of the budget book. First up is the general fund. There are 4 main parts of the SU assessments. So back to the local districts. The general fund, which consists of the administration operations and special education, and then early childhood program and food service. And we treat them separately as funds. The general fund we break out in this budget book, and then we also have a separate section for early childhood and food service. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Larry. Can you please scroll down just a little bit?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. No, that up
Yeah.
there so we can see the bars, those of us on screen. Thank you.
You got it. So I'm gonna scroll through this. If somebody wants me to, stop on a certain area, if they don't have the paper in front of them, or you can go to the website on your own. Also, it's, to remember the website, it's tinyurl.com/FY26 budget. And it's also linked on the website. The comprehensive fund summary, this just shows, going back to 23, the fund balance for our SU, and with the, it's basically, assets and liabilities fund balance sheet. Revenue sources, there are, three main types of revenue at the SU. There's, local, which is the assessments; state, which is basically now the census block grant; and then the state restricted, which is the intensive needs part of the SU special ed revenue. It's restricted because that's the old way of doing special ed, where any student over, I believe the number this year is 67, the state reimburses 90%. So if a student costs $200,000 in private tuition for special ed, anything over 66,000, the state covers 90% of
They
that.
cost 65,000.
We cover all that. That's part of the block grant. You got it. Revenues by program. This explains out, regular education, which is basically administration operations and transportation, and special education. As you can see, the majority of the SU revenue wise goes to special education. This breaks out the revenues by account, so even a more granular view of the accounts. And you can see it in the pie chart here. The blue is the assessment, the green is the census block grant. The sped reimbursement is what I just outlined. We get a small amount of money for state aided transportation relative to the entire revenue. The headline of this budget, which I'm going to go down to here, is the rate of increase for by program. So administration operations is the non-special ed part of the SU budget, and special education is the special ed part of the budget. And the headline is 9.3% is the rate of increase for the general fund for the SU for fiscal year 26 that we're proposing. Special ed accounting for 6.5% of that, and administration operations accounting for 2.8% of that. That includes the new transportation contract the board just authorized. It includes assumptions based on VHI of 11.9%, which they tell us the budget for health insurance. That includes that reduced position at the central office and the program for special ed.
Larry,
Yes,
do you know how much of that
0.3.
9.3% increase has to do with the fact that the 2.8% special ed positions that we haven't been able to hire as the FY actuals versus the anticipated adding of those two in FY26?
So break out the ones that haven't been filled
Right.
in a number.
No, is FY25 actual or budgeted?
FY25 is budgeted because FY25 hasn't ended yet.
Okay, so
So those people are in.
they're budgeted. Okay, so
Yes.
that would be zero.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Function summary. This is the typical way people think of departments or otherwise. These are using the state uniform chart of accounts. So instructional support services would include DEI, IT, student transportation is pretty self-explanatory. Direct instruction, as you can see, 56%, the vast majority of the SU. Central services would include the superintendent's office, the business office, HR, etc. Expenditures by account summary is basically salaries and benefits. Also, another important thing, if people are following along online, on the paper version, you can see it because we print it out. But here, if you click on any table, it'll bring you the actual, the numbers. So if you're looking at a chart and you want to dig into more about that number and how it compares to previous years, anytime you see a blue arrow online or on the mobile device, you can just click on it. Expenditures by function, non-function summary. Now we're back to that, where I said students instructional support services was IT, DEI, CIA, for example. Now it's broken down even more, where you can see fiscal services, that's my office, instruction and curriculum is CIA, executive admin is superintendent, special education is the top one, transportation. So as you can see, the vast majority of the SU, at 65%-ish, 66%, is special education and transportation. The next highest being IT and psychological services, which is also under the special education budget. Expenditures by account is again down to the very granular nitty gritty, where we go into health insurance. You can see health insurance. Now, Larry just said it was up 11.9%, but the actual year over year is 20%. Why is that? Well, that could be because somebody didn't have insurance, or had it through a spouse, and now because we have the 25 actuals for when we started the year, that person might have got a family plan or whatever. So that's why that difference is there. Scrolling down, fund balance. This is assets and liabilities and our fund balance. We have a healthy fund balance, and not as healthy as I'd like it. I would like it to be closer to 10 or 15% of the general fund budget. That's where we are right now. We're hoping to build that up a little bit for cash flow purposes as we are waiting, and the towns are waiting to give us money to operate cash flow.
Can I?
Yes.
In the expenditures by account.
Yep.
And also other places where we're comparing budgets. Can we put the total increase and then the percent change?
Okay. Every table
Well,
or only on certain tables? Because I can do it any way you want.
I would default to other people. I feel like every table that every one of the ones that's got like FY24 budgeted actual and then 25 and 26. Because you see the percent change and you're like 42%, and then you're like, oh, that's $20,000.
Yes. You so you'd have to do the
It's
math.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So it like helps you scan. Yeah, like the 900% increase.
yeah.
You know? Oh, and it's like, yeah, it's like $30,000.
So I can do that. I'm obviously limited to a certain number of columns to keep it in portrait mode, but I can work on it. I can try to find a way to phrase it. If I can take these column headers and rephrase the column headers to make room, I can do that.
Okay, yeah, it's more helpful.
Yeah, dollar change and then followed by a percentage change.
Yeah.
Would you rather, I'm just asking, would you rather have just dollar change and no percentage change?
I think they're both helpful, but if I had to choose, I'd rather have dollar. But
Okay.
I'm not the only one here, so.
Is anybody else?
I think so. Like, I think we
Yeah,
need to make sure it's easy for people to understand, and I
yeah,
think exactly what Nikki said. 900% sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
seeing things in actual,
1,200%.
yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially when you're dealing with, budget in the current fiscal year, the next fiscal year, if a chart of account change happens. That has
Yeah,
that has nothing to do with anything. It's we're just shifting money around.
Exactly.
You'll see those huge, minuses.
Yeah.
And
and
additions.
pluses, yeah.
So I can try to make it into 2 columns. I'll work on that.
That's the same thing that happened when we moved different things to the SU, like technology and.
Yeah. Also, one other benefit, of having a budget book where we have different sections for the schools as we build out the local budgets, it'll just keep getting a much bigger and bigger book, is, you can, we'd be able to do that. So if something, I don't foresee anything happening this year, but if something were moved to the SU, like buildings and grounds, for example, you'd be able to more easily see the zeroing out
Mhm.
because you'd have the whole thing.
Right.
Anne Marie?
I'm just curious as to why are we like separate lining the administration salaries and the mid-management supervisor salaries? Because it seems like they, if you put them into one, you wouldn't have this 42% and this negative 30%.
Yeah, you're right. And that's, so what we did was, there's two things there. The reason why the mid-management is down is because I'm zeroed out and I'm moving into Ed's line. That's one thing. The second thing is, we budgeted when we did the 25 budget, as many on the board were here and will remember, we didn't have a special assistant special education director. We added it unbudgeted for, but it's now in the 26 budget. So that's why it looks like an enormous administrative salary increase. To answer your question, Anne Marie, I don't feel comfortable pushing them together because it would violate the chart of accounts. But by Vermont Uniform Chart of Accounts, I have to keep those separate lines.
Okay, I guess we'll just have to do some splaining.
Yeah. The main thing is the deduction of mid-management is, as you saw yourself, Anne Marie, it's just shifting money. And then the additional is the assistant sped director, which was unbudgeted for 25 and is now budgeted in 26. I can think more about if there's a way to do it without combining the lines. Okay, Anne Marie, I'll look at that. Thank you.
Just, yeah, if you can do something, or if not, just if you can make a real clear explanation that we can give to the voters when they ask about it, because I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I understand that. I thought about that myself, which is why I had those reasons at the ready. So yeah, I will see what I can do about that. Expenditures by account, which we're already in, and then assessments. So at the bottom is the assessments by district. As this, the two smaller bars to the left. That's unbelievable.
I know, I don't think it's mine.
How many stars beeping? Oh, I'm sorry.
I called it or what? So the two smaller bars are the assessment by district for FY25 versus 26 administration and operations. And that's the assessment increases you can see year over year. And to the right is 25 sped versus 26 special ed. And below is the assessment breakout using LTW-ADM, which did not massively change the assessment breakout versus equalized pupil. It does affect your tax rate, but when it comes to the assessments, it's a pretty much of a wash if we had kept equalized pupil, but the state has eschewed it now. I don't know how to pronounce that. Eschewed it, and now it's LTW-ADM. So, and like previous years, as a assessment, Weathersfield is up 0.5 to 1% relative to the other districts, and Heartland and Mount Estetiny are down slightly. So all that means is if you went back to that enrollment screen where you saw the blue and the red, which are Heartland and Weathersfield, Mount Estetiny being the green is pretty steady. And then as we go back to the, I'll just bring it up real quickly. You can see it's pretty obvious what is happening in our schools for the enrollment trends to affect the assessment. As you can see down here is Albert Bridge. You add that with the green to make Mount Estetiny. And then you can see here 286 and 271. So basically Heartland is slightly larger than Weathersfield. And the biggest part of LTW-ADM is enrollment. There's a lot of other formulas, but the biggest part is enrollment still. Now moving on to early childhood program. Question? Anne Marie? Anne Marie?
You're first off, you're cutting in and out a bit for me. I don't know if that's Maya or happening to everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay. I'm just wondering if, so will we, when we get the new numbers for, I guess, what is it, 24, 25? Will those percentages change, or are we working off of those numbers that we have right now?
Good question. So when we do the SU, we all are always 1 year in the rears. So when we do the SU budget 3 years ago, it was using the 4 year ago numbers. When we did the SU budget last year, this time, we were using the previous year's numbers. This year, we're using FY24 LTW-ADM. And next year, we'll use FY25 LTW-ADM. If the board would like to approve a budget number and then have me affix the, because it's just changing the percentages, which I know makes a big difference. You got to be careful what you wish for, right? Because if we use this year's numbers, Anne Marie, it's possible that it might be more drastic because it'd be taking into account 2 years of a difference. But we could do that at a later date. So, I mean, again, that's at the pleasure of the board. The board could decide in January, after approving a budget number for the SU relatively soon, the assessment calculation could be the current fiscal year, because we wouldn't be assessing it until next fall, or the start of the next fiscal year. So basically, Anne Marie, my answer is you can do it either way you want. Historically, for the last 20 years, it's always been 1 year in the rears, because that's a state settled number. Did you hear that, Anne Marie?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Now moving on to early childhood program. Again, it's very similar to the what you just saw with the general fund revenues by account. The SU is the largest. The assessment is the largest piece of funding. The green is the special ed part of early childhood program, and that's the revenue for that. Again, you click on any of the tables and you can see the numbers. Expenditures by account summary, like most things, salaries and benefits make up most of it, except when it comes to early childhood program, 47% is other purchase service. What is that? That is Act 166. That was in that, remember that earlier screen where I showed, or the page if you're following along, about the evolution of Vermont education law. Act 166 is, we are required, and this would be one of those unfunded mandates they talk about, where to pay, I don't remember the numbers, it's 3,000 per,
Yeah.
it's roughly approximately 3,000 per kid for pre-K for 3 and 4 year olds. And we don't have a choice. We have to pay that. Budgeting for it is a moving target, but I feel comfortable with this number. So that's a rare instance where salaries and benefits do not make up the vast majority of a budget. Expenditures by function, you can see it here again. This is breaking it out by regular education and special ed. And now we have our expenditures by account, which is, again, is the nitty gritty we were talking about earlier. And if you go down here, you can see tuition to approved in-state private provider independent schools. That's that big $425,000 number. Fund balance. We have a more healthy fund balance at the early childhood program right now. As you can see, that was not always the case. So we're going to move forward with that. And then here is the assessment increase for early childhood program. Roughly $30,000 for Mount Scottney, a little less for Heartland, and more of an increase for Weathersfield because of their LTW-ADM difference that we were just discussing. Just so you know, using last year's LTW-ADM that Anne Marie mentioned, the current, as of right now, assessment breakout is Mount Scottney is 42.63% of the SU general fund and early childhood program assessment, and Heartland is 30.29%, and Weathersfield is 27.08%. When I started and my first SU budget at 23, I think Weathersfield was around 23%. So they've been going up about a 1% a year over the increase based on their increased enrollment. Remember, as your enrollment increases, that benefits you at the LTW ADM side, which benefits you on the tax side. So if you had a choice between more students or fewer students, you want more students, even though that means you pay a higher share of the SU assessment. Food services is an enterprise fund, which means it's self-balancing, or it has to be. And I'm going to go through this. This is the one assessment that's different, which we'll get to at the end, based on an SU board vote a couple of years back. And Ian can speak more to the budget and what he's inherited. But as you can see, we have a, I would say a less healthy fund balance at food services. Remember, there's three parts of revenue sources for food services, unlike early childhood program and unlike the general fund. This is an actual place where we do get some federal revenue, which is nice. Roughly a quarter is federal revenue, a third is state revenue, and the remainder is picked up by the SU. Revenues by account. This is where we break out that federal money. Universal meals is the green, that is the state, and the blue is the assessment. Another benefit of this program is the blue throughout every fund, I don't know if you noticed, is the assessment. That way people can track it as they look through and say, how much is the assessment? Expenditures by account summaries. Salaries and benefits, like most budgets, make up most of it. About a quarter of it is supplies. It's, again, kind of what Anne-Marie was speaking about earlier, that supplies is not a really great term to use for food service, but it's universal chart of accounts. We have to use the object code of supplies, but basically that's food. It's not, it's not washcloths. That's food. So this, a quarter of the SU food service budget is supplies. Food, I'm sorry. I'm saying that. Expenditures by account. And as I move down to the assessment, notice how the green is much higher here. That's because a couple of years back, the SU board decided to treat food services differently. And rather than using LTW ADM, we used the previous enrollment number in the rears. When I say enrollment, I mean actual kids in the building at that moment that we report out to the state. So that does not include, a Springfield kid from Weathersfield going to Springfield High School. It's actual bodies in the building. And as you can see here, that's why Mount Scummy School District is 55% of the SU assessment. Heartland is 22%, and Weathersfield is 21.99, which might as well be 22. Again, showing that student enrollment trend, how Heartland and Weathersfield are very close together in enrollment based on last year's enrollment. Additional information right now is just a glossary of all these great accounting terms for anybody who wants to study it. And that's all I have for the budget book.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I'm wondering if there's any desire to go back to what we did before on the food service. I doubt it. Yeah. Well, that's how we,
Unless you want to divvy out the staffing like that.
I hear what you want.
that's how we report to the state anyway. It's in building kids.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we're dividing it.
Yeah.
Larry, I like this new platform a lot.
Yeah.
It was nice in reviewing it before this meeting. It is very easy to navigate and very intuitive. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you, and, I have your notes, and I will add them. Beth?
Yeah, the only comment I guess I have is that with food service, of course, it's an enterprise fund, but it doesn't have to be. We could invest in our food service more if we wanted to. So it's not like it's like every school runs it as an enterprise fund.
That's true. Most do, Beth, and you do support it. You do support it because, if they run a deficit, we self-correct it every year. So,
Absolutely. And it's just, it's one of those things. It's a different terminology because it's that whole idea of like, we're investing in our food program. We're not running at a deficit, because it makes it seem like it's a drag on our budget. Whereas instead we're investing in feeding our children. So it's just kind of terminology to think of it more in a positive note.
thank you.
Okay. Larry, we have some introductions here.
Yes, now, turning it over, speaking of food service, thank you, Beth, is, here in person is Ian Rose. As you are aware, our former food service director left us last spring, and, we had a committee, of all the lead cooks and, administrators, myself. We had several, applicants. We had several interviews because that's the way I do things. And we had a great nominee, which you approved the contract last summer or the previous summer. And he's here tonight. Ian Rose has done a great job stepping in. And I'd like to turn it over to him.
Thank you.
Don't worry, we don't bite.
No.
Could you stop sharing so we can actually see Ian?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks, Beth.
There you go, Ben.
Yeah. My job prior to this was running a co-op, so this isn't my first board meeting. Like Larry said, my name is Ian Rose. I have been living here in Vermont since 2016. I'm originally from the Boston area. Been working in some form of food since I was 16. I'm 45, so it's been a long run. In Boston, really was opening restaurants was kind of my thing. I liked, there's just a sort of a crazy chaos to that you can't really explain, but more than that, getting to sort of like sow the seeds of a place is really fun. Building sort of the initial team. These are things like I talk about culture and energy all the time now. I didn't use those words before. I was sort of operating in that sphere before I sort of had the language for it. But that's always been the stuff that's been really interesting to me. Watching people grow, watch systems take place. And again, this was all these things that even just as, a younger adult who didn't really know what was what, that I was sort of doing these things and flexing these muscles. I've been working with local food since before the phrase farm to table existed. Kind of stumbled into a place as an intern in cooking school, where there were farmers coming in the back door with dirt under their fingernails. And this is a time in the late 90s in Cambridge where like changing your menu with the seasons was kind of still cutting edge. It's crazy to think about now. But this is just where I ended up and, kind of went from another place to another place really on purpose, going from working with chef to chef owner. And it became part of the way I live my life. It's hugely central to me as an individual, as a parent, and then in the position where I get to do this at a larger scale and feeding other people. I have 2 kids that are in Heartland. So I engaged with DFSU as a parent prior to as an employee. So I definitely have skin in the game. And the challenge of feeding them has been something that I've always, I've enjoyed that. I've got my daughter convinced. My son is still doesn't trust me that I'll put really fun things in front of him that I don't know he'll like, but I like that challenge. And now I get to do that on a bigger scale. This is a big part of what I talked about with these guys coming in, certainly doing committee interview and with Christine is, the quality of local food, quality of food in general is hugely important to me. It does not need to be fancy or highfalutin. We made an executive decision the other day, for example, to say goodbye to liquid margarine, which is gross, and get butter, real butter. You know, it's a small thing. It costs more money, but in terms of the stuff that kids are putting in their body, it's dramatically better. You know, I sort of had the fortune, so I have I have a mentor who is also my mentor. We have this really fun kind of dynamic, and he's all about the 7 habits, and I had that very much sort of ingrained into to my ethos before I got here. I don't know how long we were in the community meeting before I was talking about seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. These are the things that are part of me, and so there was a real easy fit into sort of like the philosophy of WSU. I'm used to coming into roles where there was no overlap with the last person. I akin it a bit to being a paratrooper and sort of hitting the ground ready to go. That was definitely the case here, and having to kind of figure things out as they go along. There were not tons of systems in place. I'm definitely of the mindset that if you're going to end up doing something 10 times, let's focus on making it easy, manageable, automated, if possible. There wasn't a lot of that. There really isn't tons of records keeping I can go look at, which also means we get to build it from scratch. So, you know, it's challenging in one way, but I'd always rather teach somebody how to do something right the first time than have to sort of retrain. I always sort of, the example is like a 16-year-old kid who's just got an ethic in them but doesn't know how to do anything, but you can teach them as opposed to, you know, blind people with 20 years of bad habits that you're going to have to fight and break. I'll take the challenge of the youngster who's got just the aptitude. A big part of the focus on here. So for me, like I have this personal belief that you need to do well before you can do good. Kind of what I mean by that is like doing good typically comes at, in some instances, like butter, for example, at a higher cost. You need to be able to sort of justify that cost with one thing, but if your books don't make sense and you don't know where your base layer is, it's going to be really hard to make decisions of do we want to lean on the USD commodity beef or do we want to lean on the local stuff, for example. And, you know, a lot of the work that sort of Larry and I have been doing is just sort of adding more detail and depth. It feels like food budget is one big basket, and this is just far too complex for it to be simplified down to that. If any of y'all came to me and said, you know, what do we spend on X amount of thing? I may not be able to answer you at this moment. I'm not comfortable with that. It's not that we don't lack those things. I don't know how to do it. We just don't have a sort of a broken out in an easy line item way. There's really easy ways to do that. Larry knows, leaning into his sort of IT side of things and making a nice clean budget. So that we know where we are. I don't know that I can assess the performance of the individual kitchens right now. And that's really challenging because if you had something suddenly, you know, go left of center, it would be really, really hard to figure out where it was coming from. Beyond that, we have folks that are helping to operate these places. And so when I'm looking at assessing their performance, it's really hard to do that right now. And that's kind of not fair. You sort of have an expectation, but you can't provide them tools for those kind of things. That's the real X's and O's side. The other side that's probably equally and then some more important to me is really the culture. I inherited, while we lacked systems to inherit, I definitely, you know, inherited a really good team. People that really care and have, you know, also have skin in the game through family and kiddos within the SU. And we had a team meeting the day before school started, and I said, we got 10 rules here, and the first 9 are for you kids. And, you know, I was half joking, but being very serious at the same time, and everybody's right on board with that. That's the name of the game. And that's the thing, we get to it. I've tried to put in this idea that like, we're gonna get curveballs. It's not an if, it's how many. And empowering folks so that they can make decisions in the moment so that we can keep feeding the kids. If we got to redo stuff, we do it. You know, if we can communicate stuff out, here's menu change, great. If you can't, and you're doing it, you know, one by one, then you got to do it. You know, we don't want that to happen every single day. If it is happening every single day, then let's build a better system. But just feel empowered to make decisions, not be hamstrung, because, you know, the goal is feeding kids. I tell them I want people to, you know, to make a decision, take a swing at the pitch, because then we know where the ball went. If you watch sail by, you don't know anything about your decision-making stuff. And it seems like that's taking hold. Definitely have this feeling that people are a little more involved than they used to. They'll come to me with, not just questions, but questions and answers, and in some cases, outcomes too. I love that. And just starting to see them feel a little bit more, more ownership. I will get kids say to me, give me comments about the food being improved, and I've kind of gotten a little more comfortable accepting that, but I'm not actually the one with a knife in my hand. But what I've say back is I'm providing the encouragement, and obviously like the support and the resources and things along those lines. But I've had a knife in my hand a lot this year, but I'm not the one operating these kitchens. It's lead cooks, and I don't want to take anything from that. They're the ones really on the front line. So, yes, sir.
So, I'm very pleased about the perspective data. That's what I do for a living. But also, I think you'll find that as you begin to dive into your where you get the food and how much it costs. I'm very pleased to hear about the butter. That's a but in this particular area, from a food perspective, because I've been in the food business from preparing it as well as producing it. And I think a organization of this size, especially if we can sort of team up with other SUs in the buying power, you have the opportunity to do farming backwards. In other words, you have the ability to first to produce the demand, create the market, and then that would draw on the producers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of farmers around here, and it's funny you say butter because there's farmers in the area that are interested in making butter, but it's such an expensive thing to start that most of them can go out of business because it's that end point of not having a fixed market and having to sell something locally. Same with meat. To be able to look at beef, for an example, is a product that I buy from somewhere. We call it whole beef hamburger. You take a whole cow and you make it into hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
The quality level just through the roof, and the cost is extremely reasonable. But you have to put that out there that this is what we're looking for, and then you're going to find that producers in the area will raise to that demand because you're able to create your own market.
And the big difference, I mean, there's quite a few differences between this arena and the ones I've played in before, but schools aren't going anywhere, or at least they're going somewhere well after all the restaurants have gone somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of that is sort of basic economics that I firmly understand and try to sort of utilize as much as possible. We have an economy of scale,
right?
Albeit, a modest one, but we have one. And I don't know that the resources we're getting as well utilized before. And sometimes it's as simple as, the menu development was really done individually and then handed out before. Now we get together once a month, all of us, the lead cooks and myself, and put the menu together. They know more than me about this. And so I want their input beyond that. The creative part's the fun part. There's going to be some challenges in this stuff, but it gets sort of like, the fun part is we're being creative. We're trying new things and making sure that they're part of that process. But it also gets 4 people who don't see each other to the table with each other at least once a month. Mm-hmm. And so we've got these positive communications, building of relationships, and they start talking about, hey, I've got this. Can you use that? I can't take a whole case. Can we split it? So we're starting to do that. You can basically scale that stuff up. So you mentioned other SUs. My mentor had previously been in my role at Mountain View, and she's there to answer any question I have for her. The person who took over for her, we sort of buddied up immediately. And so I spent the first month and a half of just really getting the lay of land, but building network. getting to know the people who can answer the questions that I'm invariably going to have a million of. But there are folks in this state that, there's a guy, Harley Sterling, who runs the Bellows Falls, is that Windsor Southwest? Wyndham, who calls it the Cool Kids Club, of the ones who really want to push a farm to school program. And the one he's got down there is crazy. But as soon as you're sort of part of that group, he wants to pull you in and actually leverage your resources too, and say, you know, hey, I went out and found this, you know, pasta maker or something that would fit into our thing, and you know, anybody else want it, he buys things in pallets. And so really wanting to communicate out and allow people to take part in that, but start to leverage all those resources to get better products into this market.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not rocket science that we're not looking for the heirloomness in that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If we can get, he's got Miller milk into their stuff there, which is really quite something else. But as an example, you know, just roll with butter. If you can get a local one that somebody produces that's in 3 different SUs, we've really succeeded. I mean, that's a small thing, but boy, does it touch so many different products. Yeah, for sure. That's the doing good. You know, that's, if I look at out a couple of years, getting the base layer and knowing where we are with things, knowing that I can, if I see something that's either excelling in its performance or underperforming, that I can identify where it is, to know where we stand on the bottom line, so we can actually kind of go out and make those commitments and find those products. In terms of sort of the food that we put out for people, I really have this idea: if it's a grilled cheese, call it a grilled cheese. Let's not try and fancy things up for kids. I make food the kids are going to eat. Use the energy to find the better products that go into those things. I mean, that's kind of what we're here to do. And the compost bin is a barometer. I want to see it empty as much as possible. And you know, if you make something that's a stretch, not to say that we're not putting new things out there, but if you really make lots of things that are a stretch for them, you might lose a little of that kiddo trust.
You lose a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, keep it simple. I want to see them happy. And if they don't know why their bodies feel good, but sort of they do because there's healthier oils in there, then great. You know, I know in my mind that we're doing something good in that, even if there's not like a verbal acknowledgement of those things.
Well, thank you, Ian.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And coming in. And, I mean, I personally would like to schedule several meetings, or at least to be able to see you here 3 or 4 times a year, to kind of go over and touch base with, not just the SU board, but those who are, not just because the SU, but because you have representatives from all the 3 schools. So I appreciate you coming in. But we do need to move on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was really good.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for coming in.
Thanks. So number 5, A, request for extended maternity leaves.
So I'm gonna,
Permanent leave.
what I missed. Okay.
Literally.
I'm surprised. Okay, so this is from a letter from Danielle Ballard, who for the last 2 years has been a special education paraprofessional at Heartland Elementary School. She had a baby, and on June 5th, she began her maternity leave with the intention of returning on November 19th of this year. During her time preparing, she'd set up necessary childcare arrangements necessary for her to return to work at that time. Unfortunately, she recently found out that the childcare that she arranged for is no longer possible. And despite her searching, she has not found a suitable backup option for her daughter on the short notice that she has. She has, however, looked into putting down a deposit at a child care center for the fall of 2025. And so that being said, she is requesting an extended maternity leave through the end of the school year. And says with a new child care arrangement in place, she's eager to return next year to the students and community at Heartland Elementary School. She thanks you for your time and consideration. And I'll just say that there is,
So contractor wise, every employee has a right to 12 weeks, with an extended based upon the, school board's approval.
It's at the discretion of the board.
At the
for a year.
discretion of the board. Because we can't hire anybody, I don't think it would be a good idea to, alienate this employee, because it is a, unforeseen situation. And if we say no, she's gonna quit. And if we
Yep.
say yes, then
She'll come back in the fall.
she'll come back in the fall.
Yep.
So I will take a motion to approve the extended leave.
So moved.
I probably should have done this first, so thank you.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we'll go around.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, questions? Anne Marie?
I'm just curious though, if is this a Heartland person? I'm just wondering why we're all voting, or this is an SU position?
It's an SU position, based in Heartland. Yeah.
Okay,
It says-
and,
yeah.
and is this with pay or without pay?
It's
Without pay.
As per the contract.
Just hold the
Is it-
spot.
But it's,
Just holding a spot.
yeah, is it with health insurance though? Would we be,
I don't believe so.
okay, so it's just
Well, I guess the whole
Yeah.
point is, does she have health insurance?
usually with maternity leave, it's a
health
long-term, like short-term disability to long-term disability if you're out for, I'm curious about this too, but Yeah.
I will text Tina right now, but I don't
Yeah.
believe so. I believe she does not. But if you want to hold off on the vote, I
We
can
will
do
hold
that.
up on the vote. I
Okay.
think that's an important, very good question.
Yeah.
I would imagine she would be offered Cobra, which she would pay herself. I would guess, but I want to make sure, so I'll text Tina.
Shall we
Yeah, go-
withdraw your
go.
nomination? Or can
I
we
think
just?
You can
Just
hold
keep
it.
going.
Just hold
just
it,
keep
yeah.
going? Okay,
yeah, just keep going and we'll come back.
thank you. Board goals for FY 25.
We have to create them in 5 minutes.
Well, I think that it's been on our radar.
Yeah.
And we looked at the survey results last time. The areas that stood out from my recollection were, making sure we're examining data that's disaggregated so that we can see if we're really closing the gap. One was, superintendent, evaluation
Mhm.
goals, which would be great. And there was one that was around getting input from stakeholders in policy development. So that came out as something that we could work on. So you could think about it.
Would you send out an email
Sure.
laying that out?
Yes. Yep, I sure will.
And
Then we can bring it back and talk
Yeah,
more.
we
Like,
can
sure. I
put
can happy to
comments
do
out
that.
there.
Yep.
I will put it on
Maybe
the list.
even a Google form where you
Sure.
lay
You
out
kind of-
the question and
Yep.
just have a comment section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
It'll just be 3. Okay.
Happy to do that.
Nurse subrate.
Yes, that is, and thank you, Grace, for being here. That is, if I get this right, a request for the sub nurse pay to go up to $40 instead of $35 an hour. And that's coming from,
EPSDT money.
Yeah.
The vast majority of it is a grant, Medicaid grant that we receive, EPSDT money. It was spoken about with all the nurses present in our meeting we have every spring as we decide what to do with that grant money. And as we were working through the process of nurse subs coming and going, it was oversight on my part that we never got a board vote. So we require a board vote in order to do that. The sub pay is a purview of the board, even though it's not normal subs. We're talking about nurse subs. So this is my recommendation. I think it's been a while, and there's $70,000 to $100,000 of EPSDT money, not all of which obviously go to the nurse subs, but this the amount of money that this would affect your local budgets and general fund would be very negligible.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Grace Knight. I'm the school nurse at Weathersfield School. And this came up at our last nurse meeting at our professional development afternoon. That was a week and a half ago. And EPSDT stands for Early Prevention, Screening, and Diagnostic Testing. And this is federal money that we earn for our schools. Weathersfield earned, I believe it was between $11,000 and $12,000 last year. And it's federal money through the Medicaid program, I believe, Larry.
Yeah, thank you.
And how we earn it is we provide skilled nursing services for a student body, and a percentage of them have Medicaid as their insurance plan. And this has been going on forever. I remember doing EPSDT activities when I was in nursing school in the early 1990s. This is a very, long-standing federal program, and it's really essential to us because we just drown in the daily nursing visits. Today in Weathersfield, we had 42 health office visits, passed 9 prescription medications, did 11 vision screenings of students who were suspected to need a vision referral, and actually sent home 3 vision referrals. And so there's very little time to do the kind of outreach to find the students who don't have a dentist and need a dental home. You were talking earlier about the parents who will never send in the paperwork for free and reduced lunch. The amount of hours I pour into the handful of students who don't have their immunizations, or who don't go to the specialist that their primary care thinks that they desperately need this specialist evaluation. It is so much time. And without the EPSDT nurse to come in 1 day a week or a half day a week to manage the regular flow of sore throats and, routine concerns, I can't do that deep amount of time to reach those last students. And they can't learn if they need their tonsils out and they have a chronic upset stomach and sore throat.
So
And
what
they,
I'm hearing
you know-
from you, and I just want to clarify this, is that these funds aren't just for having subs who nurses are out. You are asking for sub pay to cover the, basically the minimal medical requirements of these students. You need other people to come in and help with this.
This has been going on. I first worked in Weathersfield School in January of 2001. So EPSDT has always been there. But my sub-nurses all have full-time jobs, one at the VA and the rest at DH, and $35 an hour is not even in the ballpark of what they could.
Well, I'm so I will take a motion to approve $45 an hour.
So odd.
Well, that's what you asked for.
40.
40.
Yeah, they make 35 now.
45.
I'm happy to raise it to 45. But, does anybody have any discussion on this before?
Should we do the motion and then we can do?
Yeah, that's what you're sure.
Okay, I will take a motion. Well,
There is a budget.
There is a budget.
Larry read the numbers at 40, so.
you ran the numbers of
We had
40.
an agreement with the nurses that I would bring this you at 40.
Okay, I will take a motion to approve $40 an hour.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion?
Does every school have these set nurses that come in certain times a week?
Yes, they all do the same. They all do a very similar thing. I don't want to say same, but yes, they all do the similar thing, and they all, it's an SU program, and it benefits all the kids in all the schools.
Okay, and so I don't hear any discussion. I will take a roll call vote. Sarah,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Anne Marie,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
is Nancy with us? No.
Yes.
Aye. Oh, no, I mean, were you in the room? Because sometimes you're in the room and online.
Just online. Aye.
All right, thank you. That it?
You got him, Amy.
Davis?
Amy.
Amy?
Aye.
Oh, there you are. Okay. There's too many of you here. Davis?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye. Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Thank you. You've made a whole lot of nurses very happy.
Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, let's, after next budget season, let's crunch the numbers again.
Mhm.
Okay,
We meet every spring with the
okay.
team, the PTSD.
I can't emphasize enough, medical and dental care, how important it is. Yeah. Yes.
I have an answer from Tina. If you want it.
Okay,
Okay, she says, no, she will be removed from all benefits. Just allows us to hold her job
okay,
for a year.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay, is there any more discussion regarding the extended,
Maternity.
maternity leave? Thank you. Okay, I will take a vote to approve extended maternity leave. Sarah? See if I can get everyone this time. Beth?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Anne Marie?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Davis?
Nancy?
Nancy!
You're doing so good.
I was doing so well.
Aye.
Thank you, Davis.
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you to Tina for being so responsible.
Yes, she is always.
Okay, policies. We'll try to whip through these as much as we can.
Yep.
I will take a motion to approve the local wellness policy.
So moved.
This is
Okay.
Amy, second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I'd have to say this is a fantastically worked on policy overall. Is there any other discussion? I think this is actually probably our fourth or fifth.
I think it
reading,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no discussion, I will call a roll call vote. Across the board, Sarah,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Anne Marie,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and Nancy.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay. I'm opening this up because I actually do have some comments for
COI?
board member conflict of interest. It is the ethical and legal duty of all school board members to avoid conflict of interest as well as the appearance of conflict of interest. I guess my comment is definition. Yes. Doesn't read the same as when I read it this afternoon. Oh, here it is. Definition: conflict of interest, a situation when a board member's private interest as distinguished from the board's members' interest as a member of the general public would benefit from or be harmed by their action as a member of the board. That's extremely difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, which is it? Benefit or, and whose benefit and whose harm? So I think the idea was that it can't be, well, any conflict of interest has personal gain. Okay. Law. So the word in some way that the board member has a gain, or the board has is harmed in some way. I think that just needs to be laid out very clearly.
Where is this definition coming from? Do we know?
VSBA.
This is the VSBA's wording?
I would agree, because I would say that every one of us in some way has been harmed by the act that we're on the board.
Right.
So every single
Right.
anything would be a conflict of interest.
Right. But I think the definition is, and I don't know, even understand why harm is in there.
Right.
Because a conflict of interest isn't necessarily that the board is harmed in a way, but someone is put in a position that they do something because they gain something personally.
Right.
And that's a conflict of interest. It's not that the board is necessarily harmed. I mean, we were talking about eggs earlier. If I negotiated with the SU and was able to sell eggs at $10 a dozen, I mean,
That
I guess
would be
by
a
its definition,
conflict of interest.
that'd be a conflict of interest. I would be gained, and the board isn't harmed. The SU is harmed. Yes, David.
So I think it's talking about why the word harmed is in here is the inverse of that situation where you have a private interest that maybe just in its starting state is good, and an action of the board could negatively impact that private interest. Therefore, you would not support it.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying, is that you are making a choice based not upon your interest as a member of the general public that benefits from the general actions of the board, but by some private interest that you have that could be negatively impacted. So,
And so,
yeah, I think I have less trouble with this. I have less of an issue with this wording, I guess, that I'm hearing, because I think it's pretty clear. But if there's a way we can make it a little bit more like lay readable, that's cool, but
and it just may be the fact that it's just one big run-on sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's legalese, man.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
You want me to try to turn it into 2 sentences?
Yeah, I guess
I can try.
one of our goals here, as we started, is that to be more transparent to the public.
Okay.
And if I can't read this, someone who spent years and years teaching writing, and I can't fully, the meaning of it doesn't easily jump out at me, then I think to the general public, it's going to be confusing.
Okay.
Davis?
so that makes sense to me. And I do think that, we want to make sure that our policy does have that kind of lay readability. I do worry a little bit about going fully into edit mode in things, in sort of operational definitions of things like COI.
Yeah.
So what I wonder, if maybe is an alternative of going in and editing it, would it be possible to maybe seek out a few alternate definitions out there that have the same meaning, but like already exist and maybe have a little clearer wording?
Yeah.
I think that might be a better use for time than trying to
No,
do
yeah,
this and risk.
I don't
Yeah.
feel, I mean, I could probably come up with some suggestions, but I'm not a lawyer to be able to communicate.
Yeah, I feel like somebody out there has probably written this.
Yeah.
They have.
Before, yeah.
And if we make changes like that, we should probably run it by our legal
Exactly,
counsel,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
So,
I guess the only, I mean, my idea, an idea is to say materially harmed by their actions. Because, I mean, I read this and I was like, I'm harmed in every meeting.
Right.
But I'm not materially harmed in every meeting. And that does seem to have a legal.
Is it the person, like, it's harming the whole like the group as a board? Right?
I'm reading it as the
See,
individual.
that's where I'm confused, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, David, hang on. Elizabeth,
Thank you. Also, Amy had her hand up, but she's lowered it.
oh, I'm
Can
sorry,
I,
Amy.
can I make
Yes,
a suggestion that you might not like?
okay,
That is, what if we run it through AI and say, put this into plain language, but keep the legal sentiments accurate?
I'm open to any suggestion.
No.
Davis?
Yes.
Angie's already doing that.
yeah, we do it all the time.
The
Sorry, I
other,
wasn't really reading your screen except that.
I think that the conversation here in the room about this is that we have the definition of COI up here, but we're not defining what private interest is, right?
Right.
Because that's when we say, oh, well, I'm
Yeah.
harmed at every board meeting. It's like, yeah, but we're not talking about your private interest being harmed, right? We're talking about that. Like we can conceive of, if we're not defining private interest, it's really easy just to say like, well, X, Y, and Z harm or benefit is happening in any moment of this, what we're doing here. So maybe another thing we could do is make sure that that we're actually having when we say private interest, what exactly do we mean?
Yeah.
And I think I can think of examples in the not too distant past where not having an operational definition of that has led us to some situations.
Yeah, that's actually.
Yeah, and I really want to get this right because
Yes.
having a board member at one point be wrongfully accused of having a conflict of interest, and it just needs to be clear. Amy?
So this is mainly the conflict of interest. What I have understood it to be is if, as a member of the board, for instance, Bill, your example of eggs, I would highly recommend that instead of selling eggs to the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union, that you sell them to a different supervisory union, so as not to create
Right.
even
Yeah.
the look of conflict of interest. It's also when, in terms of contracts, if your business or your brother's business is submitting a contract, that could possibly be seen as a conflict of interest. If that
Right.
contract wins the bid,
Right.
there would have to be a really, really strong support for that. Or if you're hiring all of your relatives, or if you as a board member have a child who is receiving special ed services and you go to all of the IEP meetings and get really demanding, that
Yeah.
is also potential conflict of interest.
Right.
And it's either benefiting the board member, or if a certain board member is receiving something that is deemed conflict of interest, then we're being harmed by that, and other board members are being harmed by that.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not arguing against what they're writing. I'm arguing against the fact that when reading this, that is not clear.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth.
It's how, I guess I beg to differ. It could be that it's because I've worked with, being on the VSBA board for as long as I was and seeing this policy for as long as I did. And I also believe that people who work in businesses also have to have some understanding of conflict of interest.
Mhm.
So I think we need to also understand that our public does have more understanding than we're possibly giving them credit for.
I'm not arguing, I'm not saying that the general public, I'm generally saying is that this statement of policy doesn't clearly define what a conflict of interest is. And I believe that, my reading comprehension is, high enough that I feel if I can't understand it, then there's probably a portion of the public that can't understand this passage. Elizabeth?
And I just want to add that part of the reason that this is being updated is that the law changed this past session regarding conflict of interest.
Yeah. Davis?
I'll just throw out one more thing because I thought Amy's illustration of like what some examples are helped to clarify the language.
Right.
Is it permissible to, rather than changing the language, maybe we could put in a definition of private interest after that, and then maybe examples of what that would look like.
I don't see why
Yeah,
not.
because maybe I think that might actually do what we need it to do. Because again, I get a little weird about making edits to legal language. I think that like there's a reason that those words are in that order the way that they are, especially when it has to do with a law changing.
Mhm.
And to Amy's point too, I think it really depends where you're at. Like that, because I work in and around academia, I have to deal with this all the time. So it's like, yeah, that's COI. Like it's not. It's a common concept and operational definition, but I can also understand your point that not everyone is, depending on where you're at, you're not necessarily going to be coming across it all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we can just scaffold around it rather than trying to
I
rewrite
like
it.
the idea of defining public interest.
Yeah.
Or private.
Private interest.
And then
Some
I
examples.
think some of Amy's examples would really clarify it, even for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as you have the language that it's not limited to those examples.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, some examples included but are not limited to, and then we'll have another reading and we can.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Volunteer and work study students. So then, in reading this, let me get back to where it is. Students. One thing I won't read it, but I'm struggling with what's happening in this policy. The second sentence, the first sentence is recognizing the value of volunteers and work study students. And I like the fact that both volunteer and work study students are defined. In the second sentence, it's basically saying that that the school district has for the education and safety of its students. I think that one thing is missing, and I may be wrong, but be wrong before, is that what is the supervisory union going to do to for the volunteers and work study? Are we supervising them, or Amy?
Well, it says appropriate supervision, so we would be supervising them appropriately.
Right, but it says that the appropriate supervision appropriate supervision of volunteers and work studies will enhance. It's not saying we are going to appropriately supervise volunteers and work study. It's just.
I wonder if it relates to the screening part, though, that's explained down below,
Oh,
under the administrative
Okay.
responsibilities. That's how I read it, but
okay.
It's almost a procedure within the policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't read it as like ongoing supervision, making sure they're doing their job. It's like checking to make sure they're safe to come work in our schools or volunteer in our schools. But that's just me.
Yeah. It seems sort of strange to me that there's nothing in the statement policy that we're going to supervise the volunteers and work studies. It's just a statement that says that appropriate supervision will enhance their contribution. Yes, Davis?
Would that kind of broader definition of supervision fall under general personnel, like more general personnel policies? I'm assuming that a volunteer those would also apply to them. So that may be something that is sort of ancillary to what we're talking about here.
If they're not employees,
Not really.
though.
Not really, actually.
Okay.
Even as something as defining what, well, no, there's no statement about what the SU will do.
It does define volunteers.
Yes,
Hmm.
it defines volunteers, it defines work study students. It just doesn't say in the policy statement what we're going to do.
It does in the responsibilities though, does that?
Right. Yes, it does. But again, the statement of the policy is really the driving force behind the policy.
So in the version that I'm reading, like there's the red part is taken out. So is that how it was written
Yeah.
before?
Yes.
Okay. So it looks like before the policy part did have more of like what you're kind of asking for.
Right.
And it looks like it's been kind of separated now into two different pieces.
Right.
I don't know if it's helpful, but I wonder why they did it like that.
But they're both about screening.
Yeah.
They're both just about screening, and I think that's what they mean by the supervision. Like, we're gonna do the background checks required for them to be in our buildings. I don't know, it's a weird word to use, but
It feels like almost the name of the policy is a little bit broader than it needs to be. Like screening of volunteers and work study students actually defines what this is doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would that clarify if we just added those words to the header of the policy? Because this isn't really the overall high-level volunteers and work study students policy. This is the screening of.
Is there an additional procedure about how, I'm just curious, like, to what Davis is saying, you know, that this is just the screening part. Is there additional things that once a volunteer is in, like how that supervision is happening, or the same thing with work study students, or is this it?
Well, I think it comes down to definition of what this is doing. Are we talking about the screening portion of and the supervision of the volunteers, or are we just talking about the supervision of the volunteers? I don't know. I'm just confused by it. Yes, David.
So the alternate recommendation I would have is that, so on the one hand, if you wanted to really clarify, like this is pretty narrowly a policy about screening, you can change the name of it so that when you're looking through policies and see it, you know what it's about.
Right.
The other thing is and I don't know, I'm assuming we have the ability to do this, but under administrative responsibilities, we could add an item 4, and come up with some more general language about creating procedures that outline the supervision expectations, or just something that covers, I think, more what you're talking about, right? Like how, because general personnel policies are not covering this person,
right?
This is a statement that says that,
we do have procedures for the current policy, which do outline that a little bit.
Okay.
Currently, but we can revisit them.
Nancy?
Yes, I think you're making it more difficult than it is. It's really rather simple. And I think it's just as it's stated. That's my,
Yeah, but again, my issue is that in the statement of the policy, which is the meat of it, it should kind of give a hint what this policy is about. And it either is in the title or it's in the statement of the policy. This is about, this is really, when you're looking at the administrative responsibility, this is just about the screening. That's it.
so write it at the top and move on. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Screening,
thank you.
got it, screening. Okay.
F3, fire and emergency preparedness drill. This is something really new. This is the first read.
This is actually the second read. That was a
Second read?
mistake. Yep, it's the second
Okay,
read.
I kind of thought I'd seen it before. Yep.
Yes, Lori just missed that. So.
And someone went through this and did some nice edits. I think this has been cleaned up quite well. Does anyone else have any other comments?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So next month it'll be the third read. Moving right along. Prevention of employee harassment. We're kind of working our way to a big voting session.
Yep.
Next time.
So the new name of the policy is employee unlawful harassment.
Right.
Yep.
And in reading through this, I thought it read quite well. It's clear, concise, and it takes out some. And again, Elizabeth, I think this has to do with the change in the law. Elizabeth?
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
I presented this bill. And so any questions that you have about the new law, it really is meant to, the law changes, expands the protection away from requiring severe and pervasive harassment. And it also, and I hope that I hope that you'll have procedures that go along with this, Christine, and roll it out well to the staff. But a couple of things to highlight about it. One is because it doesn't have to be, because severe and pervasive has been removed from the law, it does not have to be the person who was targeted who reports the harassment. And it also does not have to happen. The new law states that it does not have to happen on school grounds or on the grounds of the place of employment. So, for example, as I've told Christine, there was an incident last year where there was an employee who some parents, there was a teacher who some parents were talking about on the ski slopes at Mount Escutney. And those parents could have been, had a complaint filed against them. So unfortunately, the other side of it is we tried to get students included in this law, and I plan to bring that back this year, but it means that students can have more protections at their after-school jobs than they do inside the classroom. And it also means that employees have more protections than students do. But yep. Christine.
I did, you had a question, Elizabeth, last time on regarding students as employees, and I did reach out to our legal counsel, and their response was, in terms of whether a student can be an employee, it likely depends. A student who is doing an internship or work study for school credit is likely a student, whereas
Right.
a student who's paid,
Right.
be treated like an employee. So,
Yeah.
So, yeah, right. So Elizabeth, thank you. If this policy, shows anything, on how well the law was written, I want to thank you for that. And this really is a very well-written policy.
I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's also, I think we were the fourth state in the country to adopt something like this. And we're the first to make it as expansive as it is. So, exciting stuff.
Okay. There's no more comments?
Once
Move on.
we pass it, please spread the word far and wide among employees so that they know.
Definitely.
That might be an employee blast.
Yep.
E20, community use of school facilities. This came up in discussion, I believe the last regular school board meeting, about concerns about, I believe it was the concerns about, use of facility during the day.
The fields. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When gym classes are down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking it over just to see where, because we talked about maybe it fits into this policy. And I think we can massage it to include grounds and fields under administrative responsibilities. I mean, it does already say superintendent shall establish procedures for the use of school facilities by community members, which at minimum may include reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on the use of the facilities. So I think it's just like clarifying that the grounds are part of that.
Yes.
Do we just want to go through and say anytime it says facilities, we just say grounds and
I was thinking
facilities?
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll bring it back next month with that
Okay.
on it.
You know, is there any discussion about adding that? I think, this was brought up in turn to, especially at Windsor High School, in which, there are activities outside on the athletic field and people show up to use the athletic field. And that creates sort of a safety concern. Be it, you know, not necessarily that it is a safety concern, it does create a safety concern. Yes, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, my impression of this is that I don't even think the intent of this has changed. I think that would just make it a lot clearer exactly what the scope is. So.
Yeah, right. And I think all schools have outside places. I don't think we can expand. I don't believe we can expand this to outdoor classrooms off school property.
Probably not.
And I don't think that's the intention of this. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Field trip. Great job.
Well, I have one question for you.
Sure.
That's come up, and I have to thank Lori and Katie Burke, who really helped with this as well. There is one place where the lawyer has some concern.
Yeah.
That is under the procedures.
Okay.
And it's under administration of medication, perform procedures as delegated by a parent. Says, note, only the teacher, staff member delegated by the parent may provide the care to the student. The delegation cannot be transferred to another school employee unless the parent trains and delegates to that person and signs a new form. And what Sean has said is, while students are at school, including on a school field trip, they are in your care in local parentis. I believe that the school nurse is your point person for health and medication issues, and the nurse can delegate certain nursing responsibilities to other staff. I do not think you want a parent, as opposed to the nurse, to be training people how to administer medication.
Okay, so this is about.
I think we just take that language out. The parent shouldn't be training.
No, the parent should not be training.
The person, so it should be the nurse, so.
It should be the nurse training the individual who is giving the medication.
Yes.
Now, there is, again, Hartford does this, there is certain medications that students self-medicate.
Yeah.
And so for high school students, they allow parents to give approval to their high school student to self-medicate during the field trip. Of course, these are just,
Yeah.
these are not narcotic-based
Right.
medication.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
but that is in the procedure. I think you copied that procedure as a reading over.
Yeah, we definitely did.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just make that adjustment, bring it back, and we should be
Okay.
good to go.
Thank you for giving legal advice on that.
Yep.
School age policy. We had some changes made.
Yep, at the bottom.
Right. My only concern, and this is not a concern that I want to answer, right? And I think that the special ed department should probably answer this. The application, the way I read it, a parent can apply by August 1st.
Yes.
And I think we talked about this last time. Is that going to be enough time for them to organize and give the assessment?
Didn't we say July?
I
I thought
believe
why?
we said July 1st.
Did we
I
say?
thought it changed. I thought we changed it.
It was June, and the concern was if school's not even done
Right.
yet, then no one's paying attention. And I believe we wanted to change it
To July.
July
I thought so
1st.
too.
and so then they had time to plan it.
Yeah.
It's a very small amount of students who could apply, because it's just students who are born in September.
Yeah. And they should know, as long as this policy's in place, they should know well in advance of July. So I'll have Lori change that. I thought it was,
Okay,
I thought we said July.
I just think, it's just that you've got in service starting August 24th.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an easy one.
I'm still concerned about the parents having to pay for the, like, the equity in that piece of it is, I understand why we're doing it. I understand, like you've explained, but I still just want to voice that I still have a concern about the equity of that piece of it.
Yeah. Okay. Any,
I mean, we could put in here, if it's a hardship on a family, we could take that into consideration.
we could call
Waive
it
the
a
fee.
scholarship?
Scholarship, yeah.
I don't know. So basically, we're not asking them to pay for the assessment. So if they had to go find someone else
Right.
private, like I had I said, private, it was $1,000, right? Actually, 1,100. We're not asking them to do that. We're asking them to reimburse the SU if we happen to have to pay someone to come in. Now, if we know, and maybe this could be part of the paper application, if we know somebody is going to struggle paying anything, then we could look at arranging a salary person to do it. So, for example, last year, I don't believe anyone had to pay for anything.
They paid directly to the staff member last year.
Okay,
We bought the exam, as you bought the test of the assessment, and it cost roughly $100 at the time.
but we could find a staff member that we wouldn't have to pay. It would be the special ed director or assistant special ed director could do it for no cost.
Yeah, Katie's done it before.
Yeah.
The prior year, when we didn't have this in place.
So-
I think if we could put, I don't know how other people feel about it, but that to me just was still a concern.
And maybe a question about within the actual assessment, their ability to.
In the waiver application.
In the waiver application.
Yeah, we can add something.
Add something. So if that's going to be.
Would assistance be required?
Yeah.
Would
Assistance
be
required.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring that back then.
So Megan, I agree with you. That's one of the things, but. Okay. Anti-racial policy, this is just a review. So I've just read it over today. Does anybody have questions, concerns? We have our the DEI, I want to say DEA, but this is not.
FBI,
All those things.
DEI individual here. There were some letters sent in. I don't know if you had time to read them. Elizabeth.
My understanding is that one of our problems is that the policy does not include any kind of recourse or the procedures. I mean, I think we should be looking at because we adopted both policy and procedures at the same time. They're both equally important in this particular policy.
Yeah, I think the issue that came up recently in a situation that what are the questions is what are the consequences?
Exactly.
And it's not so much that we want to define the consequences within a policy, but it might be nice to give some direction somehow.
Yeah. So, which is why I think we should be looking at I don't think we necessarily need to change anything in the policy, but I think we should look at the procedures, which were also adopted by the board, which was unusual for the board, but nonetheless, we should look at the procedures and outline a procedure for violation of the policy.
Yeah.
So we are, based on that situation, working on an anti-slur policy, which has been sent to legal counsel because we have to do that. I asked them where they're at. They're working on it. It should be, I hope it's done before our next meeting. Okay. So we can bring that as well to look at and might help.
Now, I'm not going to push back on Elizabeth because what she said is absolutely true. I just want to point out if we, while reading the procedure and to be able to allow administrators there may be something within the procedure that we might want to look at the policy to give administrator that legal ability to enforce the procedure. And, but that's putting the horse before the cart. And so I agree with Elizabeth is that we should focus on making the procedure a more workable I don't know how I want to put this, document when situations arise. But after we create that, it may be a good idea to put something in the policy to give it some backbone.
And also, they should refer to each other, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Davis?
No, I was just looking at, because number 8 in our policy statement is that link to and you will make a procedure to effectively deal with racially motivated conflicts. I mean, the only change without looking at that procedure and seeing how they can better support each other, I only wonder if we would change racially motivated conflicts to incidents. That's the one. And there may be a really good reason the word conflict is there because this actually I wasn't around when this initial thing came up, but conflicts almost feels like it's broader in a way that may not be, that may kind of go beyond the intent of this policy, whereas incidents, I think, is more, to me, what it's talking about.
Yeah.
But that might be, again, a longer discussion that wraps in the procedure.
Well, I think that came up, with our students joining us. And
Sure.
that it was clear that, those that were in that situation were not directly part of the conflict, but they were just as affected by those who were. Because, racism affects all who view it and are present to it. Elizabeth?
Maybe we could add and incidents.
Conflicts and incidents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
instead
an
of changing it. I mean,
and or.
I think kind of both. The other
Yeah.
thing is that having read through the comments that were received by the board, I mean, by the letter writers, one of the things that Tony Picarinos pointed out was why only anti-racism. And when we wrote this policy, we when we went through, we didn't write the policy, we went through the process of creating the policy. We agreed that it all starts with racism. We might consider having another policy that points to other marginal
Conflicts and conflicts and incidents of other marginalized groups.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I was just going to say we might consider having a separate policy that refers to the rest of another group of marginalized groups that just points to the anti-racism policy, so that the anti-racism policy is a standalone, but the same rules apply to other groups.
That's an interesting concept, Elizabeth. Is there any other discussion?
I think we touched on it. a little.
Nancy?
Can I just say something quick?
Yes.
I
Yes,
think
hang on,
part
Nancy.
of what we were getting at is the no tolerance, like that was a question that came up a few times, like, is that something that is going to be addressed in the procedure? And like, no tolerance means something to me, but it clearly means that, like, things in different situations, and how can that be defined and clearly expressed? That's all.
Nancy?
I agree with Elizabeth that there are many more groups that might not fall just so nicely under anti-racism that all have to be addressed.
Okay.
Somebody's pointed out to me where the no tolerance language is located.
It wasn't in this.
That's
Zero
yes,
tolerance, sorry. I don't think it was in this, but it was in, I think it's in the procedure,
Okay.
and it had come up with families and other things before, so.
It's on the statement we're supposed to post in our
Got it.
buildings
Yeah.
as well.
I think that underscores the value of looking at them next to each other, and making sure that they.
I think it is
Yeah.
zero tolerance, sorry, I said it wrong.
Mhm.
Zero
So, moving on, I have to apologize. We've had some wonderful guests tonight, and we are at 8:30. But I will hand it off to the administrative report.
Do you, I am happy to, sit out if the board so chooses and let Angie go. She's worked really hard on a data report, and I want to make sure she gets to it tonight.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, and you thought you could go.
Is that okay with you, Ange?
Yeah, do you want, I can just share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Ian, thank you for coming.
Yeah. of
Thanks,
course.
Ian.
Have a good night.
And thank you for staying and
Ian
getting a
doesn't wanna
flavor of
stay
it.
for my
Yeah,
dad.
right.
What's wrong? My apology to the board for not getting the data report to you. I've been, I've had 9 Title IX cases since the beginning of the year. One of those was a holdover from last spring, but it disrupts my work tremendously, and it also requires immediate attention. So, I will share this out with you, because I think it's going to be challenging to see some of the numbers on the slide. So, I was thinking that if there was any comments or questions, people could always, I don't know how would I address those? Would they email me separately or would we address them next time?
I think we can address them next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think that probably makes, if sharing it out and then allowing people time to digest it. And then, yeah, I am more than happy to allow that next time.
Okay.
Thank you for being flexible.
I am.
I just know Angie's been working on this diligently. I want her to be able to.
And then what? I must have another window open somewhere. It's like, oh geez. And a zillion tabs. Shrunk the window. Sorry about that. Just trying to get it.
I never lose tabs, and gee.
Let's have. Let's see if I can. Let me just get rid of this other window. Oops, and myself. Sorry about that.
It's
I
already
just
too
popped
late.
right off the-
Just losing it.
I popped right off the screen there. Well, I didn't expect that you were going to,
Sorry,
been
yeah,
ready
I was,
when you were
yeah, I
done.
know, I just was looking at the time and I had to make sure you got to present.
I do not have, anything about the summer work. I'm thinking back, we had about maybe 20, folks. We had a team come together in, July that got started on the local literacy plan, which is part of the, Agency of Education's approach to early literacy and providing, certain things or outlining what things schools will provide to support early literacy. And, then that was in July, and then in August, right before school started, we had, a couple groups come in to work on, actually we had different grade level groups come in to work on curriculum, looking at the scope and sequence, coming to an agreement of what units and the order of the units and how they would proceed in terms of what might be left out, what might be addressed. And that work will continue, on November 1st. Which is Friday. Do you see where that tab is? Because it's right below that. And I can't get to it to say, okay.
What's your screen size? Is it? Oh,
So I
working,
would,
it's working. Okay,
You got it.
you got it.
I guess I just wanted it to go faster.
Just got that great.
I'm not going anywhere with that.
So messed up.
I know.
If you go.
Go here and I turn it to the slideshow, then I should be able to scroll through the slide because I talked
Yeah,
about
you're
it.
good.
Oh, I don't like this thing showing. Can I get the bar to go down?
You're asking a lot.
I know.
Auto hide show. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. So, well, I guess it's not too bad, and I can't make it larger. So we had, so what you're seeing, so I'll go through it. I have slides for the star reading and I have slides for the star math. So, and this is an assessment given to, in the fall, given to first grade through 10th graders. And in winter, kindergarten join. So that it says K-8, but the fall data really only includes first through 10th for math and second through 10th for reading because we give our first graders in the fall the early literacy assessment. What this, and I think you can see the size of the bars. The top set of numbers is the levels, and these correspond with the state assessments. So red is significantly below proficient. The next one down right here is just below proficient. Then the blue is proficient and the green is above proficient. So this shows us, we started with star reading, you may recall, we piloted it at the last half of 22-23 school year, and then last year was our first full year. So what we're looking at here is we're comparing fall to fall, which gives us an idea of whether or not our programs we could do a theory of action that our programs may be impacting learning in the way that we would expect. So
I think the language is that the red is in urgent need and the yellow is in need of intervention. And I think STAR uses those language, even though it's level 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, and because I use the Vermont state levels, it gives it to us in this. This came right from EduClimber. So so you can see that what we want to do is we want the top two bars to shrink, and we want the bottom two bars to grow in the bottom graph. And there is slight movement toward the bottom two bars increasing in terms of percentage. So we went from at proficiency from 23 to 24.5%. So almost a full, more than a full percentage point above. Okay.
But what always confuses me with STAR is that when looking at the state testing, in the state testing, green is at proficient and blue is above proficient.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that maybe this vertical bar graph is a little bit, well, it's a horizontal bar graph, but it's read vertically down the graph. Might be easier to show the relationship between the top two bars from year to year and the bottom two bars from year to year. And then I continued to follow the same pattern throughout. So then 9th and 10th graders take STAR. And then our math scores. So K8, it's really 1st through 8th. That top bar went from 38 to 34%. And then the next bar down goes from 21 to 24%. So that shows that we're moving some of students out of the significantly below into the below. And then our blue and green go up respectively 20, from the blue goes up 1 whole percentage point, and the last one is relatively the same. It's about a 0.5 percentage point. Showing some movement forward, which is encouraging overall. Yes?
And just one thing that, because I'm assuming because the numbers of students are different, it's not necessarily, saying that we're losing people in that highest category by student. It's just the number is changing because they're,
That's never gonna be a perfect.
yeah, exactly.
No, but it is based on a percentage of students.
Yep.
So, but if this was live, which it's like in EduClimber, you can hold your mouse over it and you can see the numbers and that sort of thing.
No, it's clearly trending in the right direction, which is great.
The other thing that happens, and it's just because I know about it, is that the
want me to go back?
No, the computer adaptive piece is not based upon a single test. It's cumulative, and being only a 20-minute test, about the 4th time a student takes the test, then they're starting at the correct location. So each time you take a test, it starts you at the correct, at your level that you ended up last time instead of. So if you get a new student and it's the first time they're taking STAR, your accuracy is going to be not as high as it's, your reliability is not going to be quite so high as a student who has taken it several times.
And if they use it for progress monitoring in between the testing windows, this only reports the testing windows.
Yeah.
That also is training the program
It is,
for
yeah.
that particular student.
Yeah. It's not just based on testing windows. It's
So we, this is not super encouraging. Our top two have increased on for this year. We are doing a lot of work in the particularly with our 9th graders and our 10th graders in math. And at Windsor School in particular, they're also looking at math practices from grade 6, 7th, and 8th into the high school as those programs feed into their high school.
Angie,
Mhm.
is it the same 9th and 10th graders, or is it last year's 9th and 10th compared to this year's 9th and 10th?
That's
Last year's.
That's the same as all of them are comparing two different cohorts of students, but it looks, it's more an explanation of the curriculum.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, you might want to dig deeper in that, like, so why are more students below and significantly below than were last year? It seems like instead of going in the direction we want them to go, they went the other direction. So that would be a good question to then dive into that data deeper.
Yeah.
And which Bridget Burial is doing with her team, with the team at the high school and with the whole math, the middle level and the high school math team.
Yeah, so the question I would have is the blue above, were all those most of those 10th graders who have moved on to 11th grade this year.
Right, I think it is a cohort strength too. So we had if you looked at 8th grade last year, that might give you an indicator, because many of those 9th graders would be in the 24-25 data. Okay, so now we're gonna look at our marginalized groups data. And I put this is a really small, so I apologize for that. So the top, this is our economic advantage. So the top is students who qualify for paid lunch. And the bottom is students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So the top is our economically advantaged from fall of 23 to fall of 24. Last year fall to this year fall. And there is some forward movement. I'm particularly focusing on the bottom two bars as they are showing that they are getting longer. And that's how we want them to
That's
move.
closing the gap,
That's
starting to.
okay.
Yeah.
So, but then when we look down at the economically disadvantaged, it's comparing all students who are paid and who qualify for free and reduced to all students who qualify for free and reduced from one year to the next. Our percentages in that category did go up, and I'm not exactly sure how EduClimber takes that data. If it's the same cohort of students or if it's percentages from previous year to this year. So, but still, it shows that the blue, the reddish, the top bar is shrinking, and the bottom two bars are not losing anything and actually gaining a little something.
I'd be curious to see the three levels.
Nancy?
Paid, reduced, and free.
What would do you have the number of students in that
I
second?
cannot. Yeah, I can't give the number of students because it may be identifiable in these graphs. So in the marginalized, I don't have any of the numbers, just the percentages of students. This graph you're looking at compares male at the top to female students. it is showing that both groups are making gains for reading. This is reading, keep in mind. Any questions on gender? This graph is showing our students who are not on IEPs at the top, and something was happening with EduClimber, and I could not get the 24, 25, like I couldn't get this fall. So and I also, so I created it in sheets, and so I can't mess with the colors in sheets. So anyway, it's the same bar. So the top one is red, then it's yellow, blue, and green. And so relative, even though that it's the scale is different, relatively, here in the fall, you had about 26 and 34. So what's that? 60% last year who are at or above provision. And this year you have about 65% at or above. So that's for students who are not on IEPs. In the bottom graph, we are looking at students who are on IEPs. So we are showing some slight movement in the top bar from significantly below. And then the yellow is almost the same. It's 0.3 difference. But that blue is very encouraging, showing that we have moved, it's going from 10.6 to 15.4. The third bar down. So because this is students on IEPs, also keep in mind, it could be that a student with an IEP moved in, a student with an IEP moved out. And so it might not be apples to apples exactly. It might be, we just have to be careful about drawing to, that being super confident that what we're seeing is that thing. We just have to know that there's a possibility that it's not exactly that. So over time, it becomes more reliable if we continue to see this trend. Okay, math. So math this is the economic advantage slide. The top is showing students who are paid lunch status, and the bottom is showing students who are free and reduced status. Both graphs show that the significantly below is shrinking from the fall 23 administration to the fall 24 administration. This is the male to female. Top is male, bottom is female. You may have expected larger gaps between male and female. And these graphs are not showing that to be true overall. Yes, you. The top graph is for students who are not on IEPs. And let me tell you that number. So in the bottom two grids, it's like 28 and 17. What's that, 55? You maybe do math, 28 and 17, 45. To over here is 28 and 19, so 37. No, that can't be right. 47.
47.
So 45 to 47. I taught math. I can't actually add on the fly. The red is concerning in math for students on IEPs. One of the things we've been talking about in the MTSS coordinators meetings is looking at math interventions. We purchased curriculum the curriculum office got a grant last year. That was one of the ESSER funded little grants for, Bridges Interventions, which is it's a foundational intervention program for math. So even if you have students who are middle level or above, they could still use those materials to help support students in learning foundational concepts. And there are some, we were discussing different interventions that are used for students with IEPs who are being serviced with special educators in the programs they're using. So this is something that team is looking at.
One of the things that worries me just from a personal standpoint on the math is that, the math score is highly influenced by the reading ability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not even just testing math, you're testing math
Right.
and reading.
That's right. And I think the, we want to make sure that we're not forgetting this is about conceptual understanding too. So, we hear that and we think that sometimes that's why reading gets more attention than math, and it should be.
Right, no, I know.
Right.
It's just,
So,
yeah, it's just hard when
They
math
try
students
to-
get things wrong because they
Right.
couldn't read the question.
and they try to mitigate that because this can be read to students. So the test has that. But it still isn't the same. If you still have comprehension issues, you can have them orally.
Right.
So,
So that can be read to students.
yeah,
It's not read.
It depends on your,
on your
sections.
accommodation.
on your accommodations, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this section is talking, so we had some data that overlaps, these two areas of our strategic plan. This is attendance data, and in EduClimber, a rate of greater than 95% is what's desired. So this shows, by the school district as of, this says November 15th. This is last year's. We're not gonna look at that. This one's this year's. Okay. Well, you can look at last year's 91.85 and then 90.67, 94.49 for Manascutney, 95.72 for Weathersfield, and overall Windsor Southeast is 93.78. Last year, as of November 15th, WSESU was 94. So,
Were all the other schools as sick as Heartland this fall, or is Heartland particularly sicker?
Yeah, last fall.
Yeah, I guess they're just sicker.
I agree.
Or they keep their kids
So-
home when they're sick. Yeah, or we keep our kids. home,
Right.
Yeah. That could be.
Then 912, this is last year's 94.87, and this year 94.07. And I mean, we also have 15 fewer days on here too, or 18, something like that.
Um,
I think I gave that one. So then looking at culture and wellness, we looked at the minor behaviors. So this is, the top graph, the darker line is 23-24 data. And the bottom line is to date. So that's 24 to 25 data. So these incidences, so each of those sections is 200. So it looks like the difference from this to this is over 100.
Can you scroll that way to see how the year ended out? Or is that not?
No.
Oh, it's a screen. Okay.
That bar does not work.
Okay.
And then major behaviors, again, there's, it's tracking significantly less.
Great.
That's encouraging. I hope that can continue. I wonder if in the buildings they would agree that that's what it feels like. That our measured results,
Actually, two things can be happening, and both of them are positive.
right,
One is there's just fewer behaviors. The other possibility is that more behaviors are being handled internally by teachers
right.
themselves.
I guess the third possibility is they're just not reporting. So,
And we also got rid of cell phones.
that's right.
I was gonna say
This
this,
is year 2 with that policy.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying correlation is causation here, but yeah, the cell phone policy and, I mean, we are essentially fully staffed this year. And I think that,
Mhm.
when you're not,
Yeah.
that the stress
Right.
translates across everybody
true.
involved in the
Yeah.
system. And it wouldn't shock me if there wasn't closed.
This will be interesting to look, comparing the whole year to
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
last year.
absolutely.
So the measured results assessment is the Leader in Me survey that we do at the end of the year. And I'm putting this slide up, and there's a few more descriptive slides. So overall, in our continuous improvement plan, we're looking for a 5-point increase on this. And so that would translate to 2 to 3 this year and then 2 to 3 next year. This does include the 4 buildings. It starts with Albert Bridge, then it's Weathersfield, then it's Windsor, and then Heartland. I will tell you a little bit more about what's contained in the leadership, culture, and academic scores when we go to the next slide. So leadership includes, so this is just the score. I think it's on a 100-point scale, but I'm not exactly sure. So the family leadership includes family community engagement, which is family, school and family partnership, family engagement, community engagement. So the questions on the measured results assessment address those particular areas. Student leadership includes personal development, positive well-being, self-advocacy, interpersonal development, and pro-social behaviors. And then staff leadership over here, which is this blue section of the pie graph, personal effectiveness and interpersonal effectiveness. So our leadership leader team, leadership team addresses, this is the focus of their work, is working to improve these areas. Then our culture team is looking at 2 things: supportive environments for students, including student empowerment, school belonging, school climate, and trusted relationships. And the other side of that is supportive environment for staff, which includes staff voice and collective advocacy. So we have a 76.25 score and a 75.25 score there. And then academics looks at 4 different areas: life readiness, which is group collaboration and future focus; goal achievement, which is student goals support, student goals, and school goals. And those are our WIGs, which you hear us talk about from time to time. And also those are embodied in our student portfolios, leadership portfolios that students do, and then just talk about at their student-led conferences in the spring. It looks at empowering teachers for instructional efficacy and student-led practices, and then empowered learners, which looks at social supports and academic self-efficacy. Students leading their own learning, essentially, there. Those scores around that pie: life readiness was 80, empowering teachers is 72, 73.75 for empowered learners, and 69 for goal achievement. Our MRA doesn't get a ton of participation. We need to improve that. So that's one of the things that we're working on. This gives us a lot of interesting data to be actionable, and we just would like more people to take it. It happens in May though, and that's our time of year. So we just have to figure out how to get more.
There's no other assessments happening in May.
Yeah.
No other surveys either.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So thank you. That's what I have for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I will apologize that another half an hour. I think we tried to pack a lot into this.
We did.
We did, yeah. But
It's budget.
no, we're
It's
half an
budget.
hour over.
Okay.
Half an hour over. Tracy's on the docket. I can deliver my report at the local meetings if you want, most of it.
Yeah.
Because it's a repeat. I pull out things anyway.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Tracy?
I can go next, and we can.
Let me look at-
go next month.
Next month, we have just my report, and the budget, discussion item is budget adoption, if we're ready for that next month.
Yeah, and I'd like to cut down on policies.
Yeah.
I mean, because, we had 9 that we looked at.
We had, I don't know how it got that big, to be honest with you.
We had a-
I think next month, we're gonna sunset most of them.
You know, we had a couple come back.
We had a couple come back.
There's a big raft that all kind of came in at once.
Yeah, I mean, after that, starting in December, we've got, well, we had 4, but we added curriculum development and coordination on request.
Probably work on the local.
Yeah, and we're gonna be working on this.
And to help move the budget along, I've got all your notes about the percentage of the money and, Anne Marie's note about the chart of accounts, differences in the salaries, and what I'll do is when I get all your notes into the budget book, I'll just reshare it back out to the board.
So do you want
It's a live document, it's on the website, so it'll automatically be updated, but I'll just let you know that I've done it, and here you go.
Do
With
you
your
want,
notes.
you want to move Tracy to next month?
Yeah, and I'd like to give her more time.
To give her more time.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Cut down on certain things and.
Yeah, put her earlier and.
What I will say, I will share one, like, something that was anecdotal, because I think it connects to what we were just looking at with major and minor. Like, some of the folks in high school were just sharing at a meeting the other day about how they feel like students are doing some things less than they were because of how we responded to some of the things that have been happening this year.
That's good.
Just want to share that there may
Great.
be, that may also be, like, to think maybe some of that's showing up and how we're seeing major and minor.
That's great.
Yeah.
All that data looks encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will take a motion to end this meeting.
So moved.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
It was so late. Now, done.
It's
We covered a lot.
9 o'clock
Bill,
typical
do you
year,
think those-
unless there's something very urgent.
No, Bill usually is 8:30.
8:30, Bill's good.
Yeah.
Or earlier
At
sometimes.
8:30, yeah.
What do you want me to, well, we can talk about the policies. I mean, most of them should be like
Yeah.
quick next month,
Yeah.
but we'll take less.
Maybe just third reads.
Just third reads next month, yeah.
No, I just,
Yeah.
I thought you might have.
We weren't planning on it, but we did have a good excited.